Hello everybody, welcome back to the third part of the office ceiling tutorial. Today we're going to be looking at roughness, and we are going to be doing the emissive mask, which is super short. So I'll just bump that in with the roughness. Alright, so just to get started here, I've I've disconnected my default uniform color, but I left it there just in case I need it later. And we're going to start here with a uniform color, set to 0.675. And make sure you change your uniform color to grayscale. I mean, I guess if it's color, it won't fit into the input slot. But yeah, we're just working strictly with grayscale for roughness. And this one is going to be fairly simple. It's going to be very short. I'm going to go very quick because everything is pretty much set up already because of the base color stuff. And we're just going to end up plugging a bunch of these into the roughness. So a lot of the hard stuff or the busy work has already been done. There will be some specific things that are roughness only, but there's not many of them. Alright, so let's get started. So I'm just trying to copy paste this thing over here. Alright, so right now we're just working strictly on the tiles surface. So this stuff. And like the base color we're just gonna keep overlaying on top. So I'm not worried about like the lights or the frames just yet. Alright, and then I just need to plug this guy in. Okay. So we start here with the fractal sum base. This is a very good node for like just random grainy noise. Nothing too crazy, and it's very tweakable. So pay attention to the settings here. And then I auto level it to bring out the range. Because I want to get like full range of the grayscale to get the most contrast on my roughness. Because roughness is all about contrast. If you have everything that's something that's like too rough, it's going to be boring. If something is like too glossy, or universally glossy or universally rough, it's just, you know, it doesn't make your material stand out. You need some like good contrast, and obviously where it makes sense. You don't want to have like glass that's super rough while it's like super old, but yeah, a good contrast in roughness makes for a good interesting material or surface. Okay, so after our blur here, we're going to use the vector warp grayscale to break up the the noise. We don't want to carry it over from one tile to the other, because we have this frames dividing. We're just going to feed that into a subtract with an opacity of 0.125 and a 16 by 16. You can go up here to the output size to change it. And if you can't change it, click here. Actually, you should be able to change it. But yeah, make sure it's relative to parent. Change this to grayscale as well. Alright, so then we're going from this to this, and we're just adding some varieties. I'm just going to turn this off and on so you guys can see it. And Shift D to disable and enable it back a node. Okay. Then we're going to bring in we're going to be using our masked, our tile mask here. So we're going to go up here and we're going to pull from this guy here. Because I want to have a different, a rougher value for the edges. We're just going to plug that directly into opacity. We're not going to use a levels node like we normally do. Just going to slide them down a little bit. Uniform color set to 1. And then we're doing that copy. And we're just copying this color directly on that mask. Pretty simple. Nothing too crazy there. Then we're going to be using this guy here. We're going to plug from before the scan. So we're going to go from here, from the vector warp. And this is actually going to go into the top. And we're setting this to subtract. Because what I wanted to do here is just subtract this noise from here. Now I know here we used the same noise for the color, but we used a scan to get some of the white value from it, not all of it. But then here we're going to subtract it. And again, this is just like there is some freedom. You know, you don't have to, just because I only use this much in color doesn't mean that I only need to use that much, but you could if you wanted. But here I just want to get a little crazy with it and get like a nice contrast here, very subtle contrast between like glossy or wet looking and dry. And obviously we're going to keep layering more on top. Don't get this guy here. Alright. Moving on, we have this guy. And for this guy, we are going to pull from the vector warp grayscale down here. So from this guy, and now we're taking the specific noise, like the little holes or crevices or whatever we want to call those. And we're going to plug that in there. So now we're just painting, or now we're working on the roughness or just those guys. And it should be set, this is set to copy, whoops. And then here I'm using the uniform color to drive the color of the roughness, because we're just using this as a mask. And then I have this set to 0.675. Alright. Next we have this guy. Just gonna plug that over there. Bing bong. Now, for this guy, we're doing the next set of little holes. Same thing, we're just doing copy, and then we're using the uniform color here to drive the color of that mask that we're driving into the opacity. God, am I clicking? Alrighty. Now next we should be on to, this guy here. This was again very simple. Now we're done with the noisy surface here, and now we're going to be working on the light, the fluorescent light part. We're just going to plug that into the bottom. And just in case I missed it, this one's set to copy, and this one is set to 0.75. That's this guy here. Now for this new guy, we're doing copy again, and here we're doing 0.225. And this is just for a base roughness on the light. Then for the next one, we're going to be pulling from the noise here. I'm going to go with this guy here before the scan. Right into there. And you can see the very subtle differences if I turn this off and on. And that's what it's all about. Small, subtle differences. Details, variations. Very subtle. Now for this one, we're just going to be grabbing from the next guy over, from these little tiny specks here. If you notice here, we're not using a uniform color slot anymore, or at least for this guy, because we're just going to use this specifically. I mean, you can still do it how we normally do it, but I just changed it up here. Try and use less nodes. Alright, so here we're going to subtract the previous result, and we're subtracting these little specks from it. And then we're getting these like super dark spots, or not super, but darker than usual, to try and get some like some interesting spots on here. Is this plugged in? Yeah. So like for example, I'm gonna exaggerate it so we can see where they're at. So obviously this would be too much. That just wouldn't look good. But if you look over here and over here, you kind of want this to kind of blend in a little bit, but still like kind of stand out a little bit more. So where were we at? We were at 1 point or 0.1. We can probably go with like 175. And then you get like these like subtle wet spots that kind of make it look more interesting. Yeah, I would start with like something high and then like, you know, look at where they're at so I can focus my vision there and then just use those to like focus yourself. But obviously this is too much for a ceiling, so I'm gonna just go back to 1.75. Okay. And these would probably be visible like in game or in your environment at an angle. Obviously, if you look at it like this, you're not gonna see it. But like if the player's walking and they're looking up, and if the light hits it, you'll be able to see those details. You can see them right there. Alrighty, moving on. Then for this one, we're gonna be pulling from the last one, and this is that darkening that we have on the edges. Whoops. Okay, we're doing a copy, and then we're just using this color to drive the intensity of that mask, and we're using 0.82. If we go back over here, you can see that we have like this darkening here, which would make sense because that's where dirt, grime, dust would accumulate. Now again, I'm not worried that it's like spilling over because we're gonna override that as we go on. Alright, moving on. Now we're just gonna move on all the way down here. And then for this guy, we're going to plug in this lonely guy that we made in the first part, in the height episode. And I'm just gonna run this down because we're gonna be using this a lot. And then my first stop is gonna be here. And then this is set to copy again. And then here we're using 0.15 for the uniform color. And then here we're just setting the base color for the vent. So I'm going to move over here to the vent. Okay, so before it looked like this, and that's because it was using the old stuff, and now we're overriding everything using our mask. Move this down. And then we're just sitting here, like I said, we're just setting up a base color. Now we're going to go through all the dust that we added through our base color, and we're going to add more roughness detail to this, and it's going to look dope. Alright, so next stop, we're going to pull from this guy. Not there. Little misclick. Alright, it's going to go right into there. And you could plug it into our levels if you wanted and tweak the levels if you really wanted to get, into it. But I think it was okay for this part. We don't really need to. Alright, so here, we're just adding that base color variation. And we're just going to do like a, if you see here, we just have like a, I don't want to say random because it's like intended, but it is like a little random in noise. Just to kind of get some diversity on the plastic. Because these are not like freshly installed ceiling tiles. They've been used for a while. So you should always be thinking about like, what look are you trying to go for? What's the environment like? Is it abandoned, overgrown, used but still active? Things like this. Because you're trying to tell a story. And the story here is that this is like a everyday use office ceiling. Alright, so we're going to pull from this guy here. And we're going to pull that into the levels because here I did want to do some altering. And you see here the settings for the levels. And we'll just do 0.78. I don't know if I showed this guy, but this is a copy set to 0.2, the previous guy, and then a uniform color of 1. Okay, so yeah, we have another copy here. I showed you the levels already. And then we just have a uniform color here. And again, we're just adding more variation to the roughness. You don't just typically want to do like one and done. Okay, moving on again. Like I said, this one's pretty simple. It's gonna be a nice little short one, just to wrap up the material. Now for this one, we're gonna go down a little bit more, and we're going to pull from. Actually, I went too far. Sorry, it should be this guy here. We're gonna be pulling from this guy here. And that's gonna go into the levels. Set the copy, uniform color there. Let's just update some of these. And now we're adding that dust. Really nice detail there. And then for the next one, we're going to be pulling from this guy. Did I read these out? One copy. Oh no, because I did not update these. Just level and high changes there. Then for this next one, we're pulling from this auto levels here directly into the opacity. And then here we're adding the next set of details. Very subtle. But see how these are brighter than the rest? So this is gonna make it or give us a nice contrast here. Let's get the right angle. Yeah, so these spots are like drastically a little bit rougher than the others, than what's below it. So it really helps it stick out. Okay, next we have this little easy guy here. Or not, no, we just did that guy, this guy. Oh, did I show this stuff? Oh my god, I'm misclicking so hard. 0.75 on that guy, and then this guy's copy. And then for this guy, we're gonna plug from the sharpen. Nice little sharpen guy here. I'll do that there. Then here we have a copy, pretty standard, boom, boom, boom. And again, we make these a little more intense to really drive that contrast. And do I gotta change my, oh yeah, it should be 2.5 I think is what we're working with in this tutorial. And then I have my factor to 10. Alrighty. We're almost done. Next guy here. So I think that's it for the vent. And now we're moving on to the next guy, which is... Oh god, I lost my placing. Hold on, where am I? Okay, we're after the sharpen. So yeah, next is the frames. So here we're gonna plug in, or just, this is the one just before the frames. We're gonna pull from this guy here. with the two docked nodes. This is the dirt. This is the dirt that we have here in between the frames. So this is just before the frames. We use the levels here. Just gonna simplify these. And then we use a uniform color set to 1, copy set to 1. And then if we look over here, we can see that the dirt on the edges here, very subtle, but it's rougher. And like I said, you don't want this to be too extreme because these are still like, they're not like old ceiling, or it's not an old office, still a used office. Okay, so next is the roughness base for the frames. So we're gonna pull from our mask below, which is this guy. Which is this guy over here that we made. So let's plug that in. And now you see here that we have our base. Now I see that some of it's spilling over. I don't like that. So now you see like this is harsh, glossy line. We don't want that. So let's troubleshoot that. So I'm gonna go back over here. And I'm just gonna play with my position on my scan here. I should be able to, yeah. So I want to go into lower because 0.5 is always like the default position. And my contrast is set to all the way up. So if this is like the height that was used, you can see here that the reach of my base, my mask, is going past it here. So I just want to move my slider down to kind of reduce, and you can see here how I'm reducing the mask. So let's go with like, there you go, 0.325. And now that, actually, I still see a little bit right there. Sometimes it's just trial and error. Inspecting the frames, making sure nothing looks weird. All right, and we're still going to be adding more. So if it looks weird later on, we'll come back, but I think this is looking fine. And again, the player is going to be looking at this from or they're going to be looking up. And in video games, nobody looks up. Very, very rare. People are usually looking at the ground, unless their target is above. So, keep that in mind. Alrighty. Moving on. Yeah, players never look up. So let's pull from this guy next. This is the variance, the color variance on the frames. I don't know if I showed this 3.375 and copy. Copy again. 1 on the uniform. 0.2 on the level out high for the levels. And now we're adding some variance to the roughness of the frame. Alrighty. Next, we're going to be pulling. Actually, let me just fix this guy here. Next, we're going to be pulling from this blend, not the levels, because the levels is like artificially adjusting it. So we're gonna go from this guy into our own levels. We're gonna, adjust it with the levels differently for this guy. So we're just gonna go with, let's go with 0.262. Copy 1, and now we're adding that dust roughness. Sorry, I forgot to mute. Hope that wasn't too loud. All right. Yeah, we're almost done, guys. Probably like 3 more minutes here if I shut up. For here, we're gonna pull after the ambient occlusion and plug that into. I don't know why it doesn't let me plug it in now. You have sometimes if it doesn't let you plug it in one way, try plugging it in the opposite way. So I'm gonna go from this guy up to that, and that should work. All right, so yeah, so now we're taking like this ambient occlusion that we kind of have on everything and just kind of layering that on top. And we need something here. And that something is going to be, let me just follow this. Oh, the lonely guy from earlier. So if I go back over here, our mask, our vent mask. So I'm just gonna drag this all the way over here. I think I'm running over something. So I'm just gonna move this up. Keep your roads organized. So yeah, okay. So here I wanted to reduce the ambient occlusion on the vents. So I used the mask of the vent to subtract some of the ambient from that specific area. So we inverted the ambient occlusion. I used the levels here to kind of mess with it. Then we subtract a little bit, or like 90% of that mask from this. And then we drive that into our opacity. And then we kind of get this blanket ambient occlusion roughness on everything here. Okay, where am I at again? Okay, so yeah, so now we're here. Then for this guy, we're going to pull from this two-way street and we're going to make it a three-way street. Set the copy, 0.675, and then this level is just there for aesthetics. And what are we doing here? Okay, so now we're setting the base roughness on our fire alarm. Because it's still using the main noise, the tile surface noise. So we eventually got to replace that. Okay, and then for this one, we're going to be pulling from the levels here, just to get some of that random roughness that we added to that we used as a random color. Uniform color set to 1, copy set to 1, and we're just layering that on top. Nothing fancy there. And then this is the last detail here. And we're going to plug in this guy. Because now we're doing the inside. And then we're using 0.3 and copy set to 1. And I think that's it. And actually, yeah, we can leave it like that. I was gonna say we can do another ambient occlusion pass to try and get like some dirt, in here, but it's gonna be so small and unnoticeable that I don't think it's worth complicating the graph. But you could do that if you'd like. And then as usual, I like to sprinkle in a little sharpen at the end. You know me. Wouldn't be a snow pigment tutorial without it. And this one, what did I use? I used 0.5. So if I turn it off, and then we look, let's say over here, where we can look at a couple things. And you can see that it kind of tightens up the roughness a little bit. Oops, sorry, I had to sneeze. But I don't want it to be that hardcore, so I'm gonna just go with like 0.5. And it really sharpens the noise, and it makes it or the roughness, and it makes it stand out more. All right, I think that's it for roughness. Oh, let's not forget our emissive here, our mask. So for this, I'm just gonna pull from. I'm just gonna get this stuff here. Copy, paste. Whoops, paste. I'm gonna move this guy up here. Plug that in there. And then this is going to pull from this guy here. And then we need to plug in the same mask that we plugged into our normal blend. We're gonna need to extend this guy. Okay, once we have that plugged in, this is what it should look like. And what we did here is basically we took this. Well, let's start over here. So I took the mask for the surface here of the light, and then I blurred the mask a little bit, and then that allows me to extend the reach of it with the levels. You can see here what I used. So I extended the reach, and the reason why, because I wanted the sides here to light up because of the light that's coming out. And then I copied this, and I copied these lights with it, and I just lowered the opacity so that you can kind of see these guys that are a little bit brighter than the rest, and then it gives you this effect. And then we drove that into our emissive. I'm gonna redo this because I don't think I showed you guys how to do that. I wonder why this is not turning off, but whatever. So you're gonna do a output node, and then we're gonna call this for the identifier emissive, and then for the label emissive, but I'm gonna capitalize it because the label is what the user's going to see. They don't see the identifier. And then we plug this in. And then we're gonna go here, and hold on, let me just do a quick test. So I'm gonna plug this in. Okay, yeah, it's not working, so that's good. And then once we set our identifier and our label, I'm gonna go to the usage here while selecting the output node, and I'm gonna change this to emissive. And then I'm gonna right click this thing, and I'm gonna hit view in 3D view, and then it's gonna ask me, okay, what is it? And I'm just gonna hit emissive here. Now it's lighting up the entire thing because I have this shape, That takes up the entire thing. But then if I plug this back in, then it's using this as the emissive mask. And then you can see that there's a difference in the emissive because there's a difference in the mask, and that's because we blended the the fluorescent lights and the the overall brightness, and then you get like this cool distinction, and you can tweak it to your liking. Maybe we do more, maybe we blend it in more, maybe we do like 0.9. And then I always leave my uniform here so that I can turn it off if I want to. And I think that's it. Actually, there's one more thing let me look at real quick. Okay, something was looking weird. I had to pause to figure it out. If we look at the roughness map that we have, and then we look at the roughness map on the original, I'm going to double click it over here and you guys can see it. Something that was bothering me is that when we were playing around with this scan here, remember we were playing around with this? Because these two sets of frames, the frames around the light and the frames for the tiles, are different values. When I was playing around with the scan, it removed this guy. And then that ruined the mask for everything else, because now we have this. Let me disable the select because it's blinding me. Okay. And you can see here that the roughness is looking kind of weird because it's not supposed to be extending over to the frames. So I'm just going to move this back to where it was. And I think it was, let me just check over here to make sure. It is 0.5, so I'm just going to go back up to 0.5. And I think, I was worried about the glossiness of the base of the frame spilling over, but that's because we didn't add the other layer on top. So I shouldn't have worried about that because we weren't done. I should have trusted the process. But yeah, so we were trying to avoid that like line of, oh, it's still kind of there. But I don't think it's that noticeable, so I wouldn't worry about it. I think the fix probably not worth the extra 10 minutes. But I should have taught you guys enough for you guys to be able to fix it. But yeah, it just has to do with these masks being different values, so you would have to like equalize them so that they're at the same height, and then use that as the mask. But it's not that big a deal. No one's gonna notice that very tiny bit there. And I wonder if we can go down one maybe. Yeah, you can go down a little bit before while it's still there. So if we went to like 0.5. Yeah, so I guess we can go, the sweet spot would be like 0.325. Yeah, I mean, I'd be happy with that. Yeah, so now we don't have like this weird roughness on these corners here. And now we get this back because we didn't have the base roughness didn't apply to this. But, now it does. So that looks way better. All right, sorry about that. Yeah, look at that. Look at that juicy contrast on the roughness on that light. I'm going to be away for like a week because I have family visiting. But I'll be working on another material during it. But I won't be posting for like a week. But I'll have plenty to post when I come back. I think I'm also going to be doing a tutorial on Marmoset to show you guys how to like set up your renders for your materials. And then for people that don't have access to Marmoset, I'm going to do another one to show you guys how to set up like a render scene in Unreal Engine 5. So I'm thinking about those, and then obviously we'll have more materials coming up next. Alright guys, hope you guys learned something, and I'll see you guys on the next tutorial. Peace.